Hello, I'm Amy O'Keefe, the Executive Director for CARE at Texas Women's University, and I'm so pleased to be sharing with you about our department and about some of the special services we provide for what I call our invisible students. So this presentation is serving invisible students, providing resources to meet college students' basic needs. I know that this is an issue that many of us are assisting students now. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can get into the presentation. In just a moment. Alrighty, so let's get started. So a little bit about our department. So the CARE office is, like I said, at Texas Women's University. The focus of our department is to do two things. One, to provide wraparound services for students who are having some kind of crisis, as well as to connect students to resources. And so it's always a balance between serving the individual student and also trying to reach more students at once and make a larger impact. So I want to share, as I talk about our department, that I also want to just recognize that many of you are doing really great work working with students who are struggling to meet their basic needs, and that I wish we could be in person so we could be sharing these ideas together. But I want you to know that many of these ideas I'm going to be sharing with you today, I've openly pilfered from other places, and that I encourage you to do the same. And at some point, hopefully there'll be an opportunity where we could share ideas with each other. So let me begin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share about some of our resources, but I'm also going to provide you with resources if you're interested in doing any of these types of services for students on your own campuses. So the CARE office, as I was saying, we work with students one-on-one as well as in larger groups. The work that we're doing with students in larger groups, we try to have it be focused on prevention. So how can we educate students about issues that might help them, if possible, avoid getting into a crisis situation. But if they do become in a crisis situation, then we're here to work with them one-on-one. So we focus on adult students, commuter students, veterans, students who have children, as well as students who have experienced foster care. So let me share a little bit more about that. So in general, we refer to these students as non-traditional students. I always like to pause and take a moment. These descriptors are convenient. It's a nice shorthand when we're talking about this group of students, but they're a very diverse group of students. I love what you're seeing on the slide, label jars, not people. This is one of my favorite posters from when I was a kid in the 70s in elementary school. And I think the humor is also a good reminder to that when we're working with our students, we always want to recognize that they're a student first. And even though they fit some of these categories, such as veteran or mother or commuter or worker, that they are not easy to pigeonhole, and we don't want to do that. And with that, I also really work to practice person-first language. So it's the student first, and maybe the descriptor, if there is one, second. Also, the American Council on Education, ACE, talks about the need when we're working with students that we need to have programs where our format and our delivery and our availability of services is flexible to meet the needs of our non-traditional students. And I think in these times more than ever, we're all really seeing why that's so important. So again, it's convenient to talk about a category of students, but I want to do it from the spirit that not all of these unique needs apply to every single non-traditional student. But in general, you can see on the slide this list of challenges and needs that non-traditional students face, where their counterparts who are traditional aged, in other words, coming directly from high school and don't have all these other multiple roles, may not face all of these challenges, such as having to juggle school and family and work, transportation, childcare. They, because of all of that, non-traditional students may have little time or patience for policies that feel like obstacles. They may need more assistance navigating the university. They might feel disconnected, and they may struggle to develop a sense of belonging. So what are some best practices around working with non-traditional students? One of them is to understand who are your non-traditional students and doing this on a regular basis. It's easy for us because it's just so hard to make the time, even though we all know we want our work to be informed by data. It takes time away from what we're doing in our daily operations, and we're all feeling the pressure of doing more and more and more. But if we don't take the time to do this, we can make some missteps. So I'm going to share an example. We wanted to, and this is back in the day before we all were working online and virtually, we wanted to have a better sense of how we could include our online students in different campus traditions. We had just assumed that, well, if you're on online, you don't want to come to campus. So we held an event recognizing high achieving online students and planned the whole thing virtually. And I'm talking, this is probably 10 years ago that we did this. And we were not prepared for the number of students who showed up in person. So that was an eye-opener for us not to make assumptions about our students and to really know who they are, where they are, and what they need. And then, as you can see, the second point on this slide, educating faculty. Faculty really want to know this as well. So how do we get the information about this? The national picture. So I want to shift gears a little bit talking about students in need across the country. This is an older statistic, and we know that the numbers are higher, but you can see that, you know, what we're looking at 7 years ago, actually 1.5 million. This data is actually from 2016, let me correct that. So anyway, the point is over 1.5 million homeless children and youth were enrolled in public schools. And that data, I'm sure in our areas, we can see that it's even higher than that. And 58,000 college students at that time marked homelessness on the FAFSA application. So why? How does this happen that our students are ending up homeless or on their own? And so you can see on the slide, family conflict is an explanation. There could be abuse and neglect. There could be lack of a parent due to incarceration, illness, hospitalization, or death. As well as there could be a lack of space in temporary situations, such as shelters that don't allow adolescent boys. I think now, with everything happening with the pandemic, I think the financial crisis obviously is another reason some of our students end up homeless. So let's talk more specifically about students who've been in foster care. This is one of the groups that we have a special program for at TWU called the Frontiers Program. One of the reasons we started this program is based somewhat on this national data, which is really eye-opening. When you look at how many students are in foster care across our young people across the whole country, almost 500,000, and that nearly 270,000 of them are school age, that 84% aspire to go to college, and yet less than, depending on which survey you read, it's 3% up to as high as 11% actually earn that degree, despite that 84% want that. So if you're not familiar with foster care, here in Texas, we have an awesome nonprofit called Education Reach for Texans. This is a great website if you have questions about benefits, state benefits for students who've experienced foster care, as well as connecting with other people. If you want to learn more about how to serve students in Texas, that's a great resource for you. And the website's exactly the same as that name on the slide on the table. This is where you can get information about tuition waivers, about supervised independent living, all kinds of acronyms that can be overwhelming when you're first starting to work with students who've been in care. One thing you may not be aware of, but that it is a bill in Texas that every institution of higher learning must have a designated foster care liaison. If you are that person, definitely consider joining Education Reach for Texans, because that'll connect you with other liaisons across the state. If you're not that person, but you want to learn more, it's still a tremendous resource. Okay, so what are some of the barriers for these students to earn that degree? When you think about that 84% that want the degree, and in Texas, our number of students who have experienced foster care who are graduating from higher education is actually below the national average. It's less than 3%. So this is why at Texas Women's, we had a commitment to dedicating some resources and making that a focus of the care office to assist these students to make an impact on that number. But nonetheless, the barriers, a big one is lack of access to parental financial information and support. And another one is limited housing options. And a lot of this can apply to students, not just who are in foster care, but students who are also maybe experiencing homelessness or some other kind of crisis within their family. So what we do at TWU with the Frontiers program, this slogan, "Not About Us, Without Us," is a slogan within the foster care alumni community. And for, I think it actually applies to working with any students, that we always should be thinking about including the student voice when we're designing programs and services for our students, but especially for students who've experienced being in foster care. You only are in foster care if you've experienced some kind of trauma. So having your voice be heard and being part of the fundamental part of how programs are developed and implemented is really important. On the slide, you can see some bullets that explain trauma-informed care principles. And really the bottom line on that is that our goal in working with students who have experienced trauma is to do no harm. Now, obviously, we don't want to do any harm to any of our students we serve, and when we do, we may not even be aware of it. But in particular, when working with students who have experienced foster care, this is just so important, and we really need to bring intentionality to our work when developing these programs and services. So what does it actually look like? So one of the things we do in our program is we look at campus and community connections. Housing and financial aid are two big issues. So you can see on the slide, there's several different ways we work to address barriers around housing. For example, our students, if they live on campus, can stay year-round, even during the breaks, which is really great if you don't have anywhere to go when school's not in session. Also, we are a supervised independent living site, which means if a student who has been in foster care chooses to stay in extended care, they can have their housing covered through supervised independent living. Financial aid, we partner with financial aid so that we can help our students complete their FAFSA correctly, help them avoid common errors. We all know that FAFSA can be confusing, and so we want to help them as best we can with that. Also, we've put on their emergency grants. So we have designated some funding specifically for students who've experienced foster care to help with those gaps where they don't really have anybody who can help with that. But taking a step back, during these times of COVID-19, we also have emergency grants available for other students. Now on the slide, you can see a picture of a basket. We call that a buddy basket. So when students move in at the start of the semester, we provide a basket of all kinds of goodies to help them get their semester started off on a positive foot, and also to let them know that we really value and appreciate them. So we also have a student organization in the Frontiers program that, let me show you. So on this slide, we're showing an outdoor adventure trip that they took together. And here's the student organization when they went horseback riding together. So it's nice to have both. It's nice to have the program, which provides case management, dedicated space, a food pantry, and a lot of structure around keeping track of students and tagging base and being supportive. But what's nice about having a student organization is the students have a lot of flexibility to determine what they need and what they want to do. And so you can see on this slide that they wanted to be able to do some things to get to know each other better and have new experiences they never had before, such as horseback riding. What's really cool about doing outdoor adventure with these students and also other non-traditional students is that it really is a way to develop trust, to have a safe space, which helps you gain skills to build resiliency and coping mechanisms, and mindfulness as well. Okay, so now I want to shift gears to talk about broader issues facing many students, particularly now. So in 2017, EAB put out a report addressing college students' basic needs, and they found 3 types of struggling students: the chronically poor, the newly struggling, and those in crisis. And so you can see that those students in crisis, the newly struggling, those are the new numbers that we're seeing on our college campuses now. And so when you're struggling with meeting basic needs such as food and shelter, what's the impact to your academic success? I mean, that sort of seems like an obvious question, but I think it's really impactful to see how significant learning is impacted when your basic needs are not met. So you can see on this slide, 55% experience stress and anxiety. They're more likely to drop a class. They're 15 times more likely to fail a class, and under 20% will graduate in 5 years. This is a significant issue. So one of the ways to address food insecurity is by having food pantries. So if you don't already have a food pantry on your campus, both Tarrant County and North Texas Food Bank are certainly interested in partnerships with institutions of higher learning. They are very concerned about serving this population and recognize that the need is real, that the quote unquote starving college student is not a myth, that's a reality. And so whether you have a pantry on your campus or whether you have what you see here is the mobile one that comes to campus, these are both strategies for helping meet that need for your student. So we were the first university in North Texas to have a contract with, to have a mobile food pantry. We've had a pantry on campus, which has non-perishable items for over 30 years. We have a long history of providing these kinds of services to students. If you're thinking about getting started with a pantry, here are some tips on that: to start small, to be proactive in promoting it in a way where it avoids stigma, and look for creative funding opportunities. At the end of this presentation, I have a list of a lot of different links to resources that gives you more specifics. If you're looking on how to start a food pantry, there's some great resources that give you step-by-step on how to do that. Okay, so adult students. So I'm sure these statistics are going to look familiar to most of you. One thing that I really want to spend a little time chatting about is part-time students. When you think about serving invisible students, our part-time students, I think, are some of those students that unfortunately are the ones that get overlooked. Besides the financial burden of not being eligible for financial aid, the long road to earning a degree can be especially daunting for students enrolled part-time. So I just challenge ourselves here in the care office and also us as a community of people serving students. Like, what can we do? How can we support these students to really help them make it over the finish line? Commuter students. So commuter students are the majority of students in the country going to university and college. So they obviously don't live on campus. They commute from either living at home or somewhere else, that most of them work. And they tend also to work more than students who live on campus. So they're a group that we need to be able, that we're supporting, knowing that we need to be sure that they're getting that time that they need to study, and that we're reaching out in special ways to them to make sure that they know that all resources are available to them just as they are for residential students. And that's something I think we do pretty well here at TWU. One of the ways we do that is we have legal services for students. So the legal services are, as you can see on the slide, it's free for all of our students to get these kinds of consultations and advice. And it's especially helpful for students who are entering into leases for the first time, and also for students who have, understandably so, a lot of concern about immigration warnings, identity theft. These are all topics that our student legal services assist our students. Cash course. So for those of you who are working with students around their financial well-being, this is a great service that you may want to think about. So there's a survey that's been done by the Gallup Purdue Index called the Great Jobs, Great Lives. And probably many of you have heard of this report, but I just always love revisiting it because it helps me remember why our work matters so much. So this was a study of 30,000 college graduates across the US. And basically, what it affirmed is that institutions of higher learning have a responsibility to prepare students to not just pursue better jobs, but to successfully pursue better lives. And I think you all have had experiences with students who that's what they're looking for, and that's what they want. They want more than the job. They have a passion. They want to make a difference in the world. So this survey was organized into 5 areas. Well-being was thought of in 5 ways: purpose, social, financial, community, and physical. And so what this report concluded was the odds of thriving in all 5 areas of well-being more than double for college graduates when they feel their college prepared them for life outside of the college. So in other words, when our spaces are about having our whole student thrive, it's not just about finding the job. The students were more than double felt like they had succeeded in thriving in all 5 of these areas. So one of the ways that we address the financial well-being is through Cash Course. Cash Course is a free platform, and if you just Google, and actually the link is also at the end of this presentation, you can look into becoming a Cash Course campus yourself. One of the practical ways we use this tool is that it has all kinds of budget templates. So if a student needs to do a budget review with financial aid because something has changed, there's great templates in there that help walk the student through all the considerations when developing a budget. Okay, student parents. So over a quarter of all college students are parents, and this is a number that's growing despite services for them aren't necessarily growing for them. One thing I'm really super proud about is TWU really has made a commitment to serving. You can see in the slide, that's our chancellor at graduation, and the graduate has her little newborn with her as she crossed the stage to earn her diploma, to pick up her degree. So you can see that we have several different ways we serve students who have children. We have a student organization. We provide lactation training and rooms. We have childcare information, family on-campus housing, as well as the holiday gift program. But the big thing is childcare. So this is such a crucial need for students. We are very fortunate that we are a C campus, which means we have federal funding to help underwrite or subsidize the cost of childcare. Because of all these different ways we assist students who have children, we are really proud that we were recently recognized as the #1 university in the country, public university, for serving students with children. So one of the ways that we do that is through doing this self-assessment toolkit. So this is also another free instrument you can use for your campuses. What this toolkit does is it provides the structure for you to see any gaps you may have in serving your students who have children. It's just incredibly helpful. It walks you through all the steps from assembling your task force. It has the survey that has you, and it gives you guidance on how to get it through your IRB, all the steps. And then when you get that information back, it helps you make a plan. It goes back to my earlier point about really needing to understand who your students are to make sure that your programs and services are meeting their needs. So the family-friendly toolkit is one way to do that. So one of my favorite traditions is our family graduation celebration. And I think it's these kinds of programs that helped us earn our ranking as #1 public university for serving students with children. So in this celebration, you can see that the children of the graduate get to wear a cap and gown and actually receive a version of a diploma acknowledging their efforts and supporting their mom or dad through all the work to earn that degree. It's a family commitment for sure. Another program we have, which might be easy for all of you to implement if you don't already have something like this, is what we call the Pioneer Quiet Backpacks. So we have a backpack with developmentally appropriate quiet toys that students can check out if they unexpectedly have to bring their children to campus. This is a way that they can, if they need to meet with an advisor or go to financial aid or be in some office, they have a way to occupy their children if they're here unexpectedly. It's just a nice way that we can show that we care about our students who have children and that we want to be part of helping it to make their lives a little easier. Lactation spaces. So you may or may not be aware that Texas has an award you can pursue called the Mother Friendly Work Site. And if you meet the criteria for the different ways you support your employees who want to breastfeed on campus, then you can earn this award. And although it's focused on employees, definitely students benefit from that as well. And here is in the photo, the logo of earning that award, and then as well as the lactation room itself. Okay, so ways we support students through student organizations. We have an honor society that is for students who are in fully online programs. We started it more than 10 years ago. And on the slide, you can see an example of one of the activities where they did a pumpkin carving contest and posted pictures online. Now, of course, before COVID, this was probably much more revolutionary to have a student organization that's for students entirely online. And we're all needing to get creative around serving all of our students now that we're working remotely. But some lessons we've learned from working with this organization that we created over 10 years ago is that it's good to have both passive and active programming. In other words, we have things that students can read and share, that those activities can happen asynchronous, but it's also important to have things that are live, such as we do a induction that's all virtual where they get inducted into this honor society, and that's live. Veterans, many of you serve veterans and you probably are aware of how many veterans, when you look at that, almost 1 million have enrolled in classes since the post 9/11 GI Bill came into effect. That's just incredible. And you know, when thinking about non-traditional students, veterans certainly fit that profile. And I really love this statistic that veteran students on average have higher GPAs and retention rates than compared to their peers. I think those are important stats to share because sometimes people think that non-traditional students are less somehow, which is just not the case. And that's why it's nice to have some of these statistics at your fingertips. So some common campus challenges that veterans face, but also I think non-traditional students in general may face, but veterans have shared that the two biggest issues are transitioning from military to civilian, and then once you're in the post-secondary environment, feeling the isolation. So at TWU, we have on the slide, you can see about the numbers of students that we have. Our resources include, we have a dedicated space that's just for student veterans. They get to have honor cords when they graduate. We do a big program on Veterans Day. We have an active chapter of the Student Veterans Association. If you don't have a chapter on your campus, that would be the place I would start. And feel free to reach out to me if you need any assistance with that. That's the National SBA makes that really easy to do. And it really is a great starting point for them growing your services from there. We do priority registration for veterans, and we offer personalized help with their benefits. So recognition events are important. These are a big part of what aids transition, because this shows that the university understands your service and that we appreciate your service and that you are welcome here. So in Texas, we actually have, as a state, a Women Veterans Day. It's June 12th, and here's the theme you can see. I'm your mother, I'm your daughter, I'm your sister, I'm your friend, I'm your neighbor, I'm the veteran. To help with isolation, we have a training called Vet Zone Training that we offer our faculty and staff so that they can learn about some of the unique needs of our veterans and what some of our resources are specifically for veterans. So veterans then know when they're on campus, when they see that symbol, which was designed by one of our students, that they're working with someone who has some training and who will be able to guide them. Okay, so do numbers tell the whole story? So to do all these different programs I've talked about, we're a small office. We have 4 of us, one administrative person, one person who's focused on the child care grant, and then myself and one other person. So what does this really look like? Well, it's a lot of student contacts. And one thing that I think needs to be clear is that when you make commitments to students who have need, you need to be able to fulfill that commitment. So you can see that we had, out of those 700 student contacts in a semester, 180 were made by 12 students. One student alone had 30 contacts with us. And you can see on the slide all the different reasons why the student needed help. So I think that's important to share because it can be easy to think, well, we can do all these different things. But if you're an office of 1, I just invite you to really consider your data and prioritize, because there's nothing worse than meeting a student who has needs and you can't assist them. And I know that we can't always help. The needs mostly are way bigger than what we can do, but just being our authentic selves and being a listening board for students sometimes is the best that we can do. So I want to end by sharing what I mean by that. So probably now more than ever, I'm looking for how to stay inspired. That I know that the world right now, there's so many challenges on so many different fronts. So how do we stay energized and stay focused on continuing to deliver quality services for students, which is why we're all in the work that we're in. So I want to share this story with you. This is my go-to when I'm feeling like I need a pick-me-up. So we have a tradition that's more than 30 years old called the Holiday Gift Program. And you can probably figure out what it is from looking at the slide. But basically, we have students who have children, currently enrolled students who have children, can apply to be matched anonymously with a sponsor who will provide gifts for them. So the majority of the sponsors are faculty and staff, although we do have some outside organizations that help. We support between 300 to 400 students every single year through this program, so it's a big program for us. But to really understand the impact of it and why I'm sharing this as my fuel for inspiration, I want to take you back probably, gosh, it's more than 10 years ago, because this was when we had 2 different campuses in Dallas before our new building that we have now. So I was on the Dallas campus bringing gifts to a student. And when she came to pick them up, she looked at me and she said, I just really want to thank you for bringing these. And I said, well, I'll be sure to, pass that along to the person who provided these. And she's like, no, no, no. And she reached out and grabbed my arm and looked me right in the eyes. And she said, you really need to hear this. And even to this day, more than 10 years ago, it's probably closer to 15, this story still goes directly to my heart. She said, I am a single mom of 3 children in the nursing program. And financially, this is a huge stretch, but also just how hard this program is, has me stretched so thin. And she said, so this year, my 3 children said to me, Mommy, we really want a Christmas tree. And she said, told them no, that they could not have a tree. And then she shared with me, she said, I could probably afford some kind of small tree, but I don't want to get the tree for them, because then they're going to think that even though they said they'd only want the tree, they're going to think that Santa's going to come and there's going to be presents. So what I want you to know is that these gifts are more than gifts. What you have given me is you've given me hope, that my children can have hope. And so I share that with you because your work that you do with our non-traditional students, it's just, I guess I'm struggling for the words for how important it is that these students, our invisible students, need our support. They need to be seen. They need to be heard. They need to be front and center of the work that we do. That's what we aim for here at Texas Women's in the Care Office. I so wish I could be with you in person so that we could be sharing stories and I could be learning from you. But please know that I'm available, and let me advance the slide so you can see. So there are the resources I talked about, as well as here's my contact information. I would love to chat with you and learn how we can serve these students together. I really appreciate your time listening to this, and I hope you found it helpful. Take care.